So sorry, you snuck up on me. I didn't see you come in. Just doing a little light reading here, and we're going to be talking about gurus today. We're going to be talking about David Icke. David Icke is a guru, but talking about gurus got me thinking about this old guy, Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada, a man I often refer to as the Archie Bunker of 1960s new religious movements. The reason I start by joking about him showing the image and talking about that is because the word guru that we're going to be trying to focus our attention and examining our beliefs and our systems to try, because they say, the unexamined life is worth living. The title of this video might be David Icke as Guru, or it might be, is David Icke your guru? Okay, I'm not saying that I have an answer to these questions, but I do think that looking at these questions and looking at this thinker, in that context, I think will be elucidating and enlightening for both of us. I'm kind of going to be trying to take a little bit different take on my analysis of these thinkers, philosophers, and conspiracy theory researchers, whatever you want to call them, and try to engage in the material, maybe not in such a negative or hostile manner, but rather just saying let's put these things underneath the magnifying glass, because it can lead us to knowledge, and it can lead us to information, and it can lead us therefore to growth. So what was the origin of this video? Really what it was what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about David Icke. And, I thought it very important because the man, this is an individual who can speak for 10 hours about various subjects. And this is a man who when he publishes a book, it's not uncommon for those books to run to 700 to 900 pages. There's just a lot of material there. So I think it's important that we focus, and I thought it was good if we focus in on a very narrow question and a very narrow issue and a very narrow examination, because it might, lead more fruitful results and won't lead us off into all sorts of different tangents, which is a constant temptation of mine, or for me. Okay, so what was the origin? Basically, here's the question: is David Icke a guru? I showed you the photo because when we say the term guru in this context, not a C+ guru, not a the programming language, not a anaconda guru, not a law guru, not a professor guru, not a sitar guru, a religious guru, right? Someone in that context, guru, good as God, who brings the devotee from ignorance to knowledge, illuminates, enlightens, brings forth. One of the things that I wanted to do previously when talking about my own personal religious beliefs, I just did in a couple of videos, was to show and demonstrate that, number one, I've got skin in this game, and to number two, show that this is my community. I feel part of this community. This new age, what I've come to refer to as the new age diaspora, that I do believe that you can analyze in a historical context a grand religious movement, often colloquially termed or talked about as the New Age, that has many different tributaries and rivers, draws from Hinduism and Buddhism, but also generates new information. A wide subject and a hard subject to get your hands around, but I wanted to demonstrate and show that I even though my particular religious thought processes or philosophies or theologies or cosmologies might be very idiosyncratic to myself, okay, I do believe that I do experience and feel my spiritual life in this grander historical, sociological context. That's how I put my world together. That's how I look at things. And in doing that, there were certain people know there's certain things in this New Age community that I like, and there's certain thoughts, philosophers, theologians that I think might have adverse or deleterious effects upon the people that believe them. I'm not here to judge David Icke, and I'm not here to say that his particular philosophies or all of his particular philosophies are negative. In fact, as we get to unpacking things, you'll see that what I'm really trying to demonstrate and show is that David Icke is really, he's not doing anything new. And if looked at in a certain way, we can understand him to be acting and behaving as a guru in exactly the same way as A.C. Bhaktivedanta could be considered a guru, in the exact same way that someone like Sai Baba could be considered a guru, in the exact same way that someone like Simon Parks could be considered a guru, Jay-Z Knight, Ramtha could be a guru. There's gurus to beat the band, right? You know what I mean? There's like, pick a guru, name a guru, Nityananda. Hey, you know what I mean? Tons of them out there, past, present, and no doubt in the future. And in fact, it might be important to look at David Icke as a guru and ask ourselves this question, because he might be part of a historical precedent. This might be a new type of religious leader, right? A new type of theological thinker and proponent and guru. Okay, that is, a new model that we will see replicated in the future. We may already be seeing replicated in the form of individuals like Mark Passio and Simon Parks. Pick a guy. Okay, so what got me started down this road, and what kind of got me started down a road of kind of a negative analysis, but I was able to kind of steer it into what I feel is a positive direction, is the issue of contradictions and hypocrisy. Now, I might be picking the wrong terms, and I just want to be very clear, so people know that I've said in the past that I think that it's problematic to think of things in terms of contradiction and hypocrisy, because I think that really has to do with maybe a delusional sense we have about the solidity of our personalities, our psyches, and our personas. I don't want to get too off on too big a distraction. So let's just say this, is that when I started thinking about David Icke and how to cover David Icke and how to work with David Icke with you guys, one of the things that I noted that jumped right out at me was this contradiction that I felt, that he was acting as a spiritual guide and teacher for his community, but at the same time he would often speak and talk about past organized religion, theologies or cosmologies, ancient Hindu traditions, Buddhist traditions, Christian, Jew, whatever, ancient religions, older religions, organized religion, as being this kind of, anathema and horrible. In fact, many times when you see a guy like David Icke talk about organized religion, you might for a minute think that you were listening to someone like, Bill Maher, or maybe the late Bill Hicks, a comedian, an atheistic comedian who was just, given organized religion, what for? You know what I mean? And here's another, and what is it for? What is this load of bollocks for? Money. You know what I mean? I can't do a David Icke impersonation. There were 3 failed attempts at the beginning of this video where in my mind's eye, when I do a David Icke impersonation in my mind and rehearse it in my head, I sound just like the dude. But then in the reality of it, for some reason, there's this disconnect, and I just can't get the accent. I'm pretty good at what's this then? The motions, but no, not the accent. I can't do. Did I get myself distracted? Okay, he would come off as, organized religion, fuck you, right? Religion is a trap. It's an illusion. It's here to keep your soul endlessly cycled in this limited universe, this limited world of 3D mainstream matrix reality, right? To disguise you and to fool you from understanding your full effluescence as a universal spirit soul, okay? So it got me thinking, because really when you think about a guy like David Icke and the full import of all of his activities, okay, there's a heavy spiritual, theological, cosmological component. He is arguing, in my opinion, for a particular metaphysical reality. He is trying to tell you what is true about the nature of the universe, including the nature of your spirit soul. Right? That's a spiritual tenet. That's a religious tenet, I dare say. In some contexts, people can parse out the words. Is it religious? But you know where I'm going with this, and you know what I'm saying. Okay? So I thought it was important to look at it, because I was watching videos, and you can tell when people have that David Icke, you can usually tell a guy comes, even me, you can come out and, whether it's they mention the people that came before them by name, whether they give a shout out or pay lip service or mention the research that they're building off of, or whether you can just note the material that they're working with, the philosophies that they're espousing, and say, oh, he probably started off with David Icke, okay? Because recognize certain things, certain themes. Reptilians, David Icke. Okay, so here we go. So these are questions, and I'm not trying to say that I've got answers to them. I'm not trying to say that I've got definitive proof that is a definitional reality. You can say that David Icke is a guru, or that he's acting, or that anyone is interacting with him as devotee to guru. Okay? But I want to put it out there to ask yourselves, and if you're influenced by David Icke, if you think about David Icke's material, if you get a lot out of it, whether or not this question is true, whether or not David Icke is a guru, right? Or whether or not David Icke is your guru. Take things on faith. You hear an argument that convinces no one, but it resonates with you and convinces you of some radical new approach to life, to lifestyle, or to your interaction with the world around you, right? It's heavy stuff if you believe what David Icke has to say. And much like you could look at people in different cults or organized religions and say, oh God, at the nexus of this person's, manic depression and this religious fervor, this could be a bad combo. This could be TNT, right? And much in the same way, if you've got underlining issues of a psychological nature, you introduce David Icke into your world, you know what I mean? Whoa. So let's examine these things. Let's talk about these things. Let's talk about what we believe, what David Icke may believe, and just to try and kick it around a little. Work with the material and see if it generates any thoughts or, in us and any emotions. Okay? This is not a question. I don't have answers. And even if I did have answers, this is really not a judgment. You know what I mean? I don't think that the term guru is synonymous with cheat, crook, liar, or thief. I don't. Okay? I think it is what it is. A religious, spiritual leader who you accept as authentic and true, and who tells you you are ignorant through no fault of your own. It's not a judgment, but I got the knowledge. I've got the info. I've got the fire to spread. Okay? So it's not a judgment. This is just, we're talking about it. Okay, let's unpack guru, the term, just a little, just so that we can make some distinctions. Traditionally in the Hindu milieu, the term guru can be understood as translated in various different ways. It's sometimes translated as the bearer of light. It's sometimes basically translated as that he who brings you closer to God or brings you to God. There's certain definitional statements about the guru, the status of the guru in certain sampradayas or separate religious communities that basically make them a god. In today's society, we also use the term guru in a secular sense. Like I said before, like a computer guru or your IT guru, or your hair or your. We're here on YouTube, so let's talk about our makeup gurus. There's going to be a sister channel where I also do high fashion and glamour photography. We're doing some tips and some tricks, how to exploit and make the most out of your 1999 computer camera and 1987 microphone. No joke. But I do want to focus in and let you know that we're trying to talk about David Icke not as the secular guru, not in this kind of sense, but in the religious context and sense. Let's talk now about a branch of Hindu philosophy, a very influential branch of Hindu philosophy called Advaita philosophy, often translated into English as non-dual philosophy. The reason I want to introduce that concept is because I want to make a distinction, and I want to basically set up this theory and this concept. There are two David Icke information packets. There's two real core teachings, and they're interrelated and they're integrated, but one is more important to, I think, the community of David Icke fanatics and followers, and I think one is more important to David Icke. Okay, and so we want to talk about these things and talk about these two components of the message. And basically, let's think about it this way. In the material world around us, there are conspiracies afoot. the people that they're the Illuminati. This, it's good. I don't need to, what I'm talking about. We're talking about David Icke. You know what I'm fucking talking about. It's conspiracy theory world, right? Who runs the government? Who's pulling the strings behind the scene? Who's in control? The reptiles, the archons, This is how it works in the material universe. Here are the conspiracies and how the conspiracies fold out. Now you have what we can consider the mundane conspiracies. This is what your governments are really doing. This is what Barack Obama is really about. Here's what Putin is really trying to do. Here's the agenda. This is the role the Illuminati play. Here come the Jesuits. Whatever. It's that material, simple conspiracy. Political conspiracy, right? Criminal conspiracy. Material conspiracy. Moving up beyond that level, there's another aspect of the conspiracy with David Icke, which is the kind of more mystical or mythical, the reptiles, the aliens, the archons from another dimension who are interacting within this physical universe, doing material things, but the nature of the subject brings it just beyond, right? It's Alex Jones looking at David Icke and saying, oh, there's a turd in the punch bowl, right? Because you're going from the Alex Jones political level of conspiracy to this whole another level, right? So that's the conspiracy world, and obviously David Icke is most famous for that. But underlying the philosophy of the conspiracy, David Icke, okay, in his books, and I've read 2 of them completely, and I'm working on my 3rd. It's exhausting. God damn it. What can I tell you? Really, just thinking about it, trying to finish this book that I want to do a review of, it's like reading the Bible. It's just ridiculous how long this fucking thing is. Anyway, getting back on track, the non-dual philosophy. Okay, so there's the conspiracy thing, and the conspiracy thing is different levels, but underneath it all, what is David Icke really think about the true nature of reality? And that's what I think is the story or the message or the lesson that is most important to David Icke personally, and why I think it's the part that I think makes him a guru. In addition to the sense that there's cosmological and theological import or impacts of the conspiracies they suggested, and therefore he's talking about a religious kind of reality. But in the same context, this underlying theological philosophy of, here we go. Love is the only answer. You are not a physical body restricted. You are infinite power, infinite love, infinite energy, infinite expansion. And the conspiracy is designed to take you from that state and to control you and to break you and to trap you. Okay? That's what happens to your soul when you die. How are we not going to put this in a religious context? He's talking about what happens to your soul, even talking about that, souls, when you die in life after death. No, come on. These may be your religious and spiritual beliefs. So when I talk about the hypocrisy and the contradiction of David Icke going off about, these things about organized religion and it's all designed to scam you and trap you, the net effect of his philosophy is exactly the same. He's putting forward a religious worldview, and it's not a new religious worldview. I mentioned it briefly. We kind of got off on a tangent, so let me focus back in non-dual philosophy, Advaita philosophy. I can't put a year on him, but there was a famous guru called Adi Shankara, who came about in Hinduism, and he was a Hindu reformer, and a lot of his impact had to do with his interaction and integration with certain new philosophies that would lead to things like offshoots of Hinduism, like Buddhism and Jainism. Okay, religious movements that were so distinct, and Sikhism also to a degree, that were so distinct in a way that they were differentiated from Hinduism in the larger context. And Hinduism as a concept, we could have a whole series of videos about that and how it's defined. But whatever. Adi Shankara basically kind of looked at the old Vedic teachings that were collections of mythology, parables, folklore, legends, what have you. The many, Puranas and Gitas that were out in that, and he analyzed them and basically analyzed them from a philosophical concept or point of view that was very akin, and really many people consider a reaction to Buddhism and the influence of Buddhism is kind of taking Hinduism and say, whoa, 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 whoa. You don't need to convert to Buddhism just because you realize you're an atheist, Patel. You can still be a Hindu and realize that it's more of a philosophy. Okay? And one of the core teachings of Shankara, one of the key understandings that he had was that we are all God. That it's an illusion that we are separated or differentiated, and really the reality of it is if we expand our minds out in meditation and prayer, we will see the walls of illusion and delusion fall, and we will realize who we truly are. In today's society, there's many advocates of non-dual philosophy. A lot of them are called neo-Advaita philosophers. These would be teachers like Gangaji, Papaji, who's the chap? Cohen, Andrew Cohen, Shanti. I think there's some dude named Shanti. It's basically that. Ken Wilber's concept of big mind is very close to this classic depiction or statement regarding non-dual philosophy. Okay, so you realize that that's really what David Icke is saying. So David Icke really, I think in many ways, can be considered simply at his core a proponent of classic non-dual philosophy, right? That we are all one. And not in the sense of I'm part of the one and you're part of the one. No. That the notion that I am separate or distinct from you or distinct from this computer or distinct from this digital or whatever, it's all an illusion. And that the reality of it is, oh my God, I realize I'm God. You're God. We're all God. Oh, Ida Samraj is a great one too, because the thing with non-dual philosophy is you take it too far, you start saying to yourself things like, oh shit, I realize I am God. And we'll talk about Adi Dasamraj and the abstraction that non-dual philosophy can lead to in some other video, perchance. But for now, let's understand that David Icke's concept and conception that underlines, right? Because if you look at the David Icke project, right? If you start from the material and work your way into the interior, right? You see that is it that the conspiracy theory dictates this love is the only answer, we are infinite vibration philosophy? I dare say no. I dare say it's that non-dual philosophy that then is fleshed out or seen or he sees or he tells you can be seen in these material conspiracies that we see around us. The actions of this person or that person. So there you go. Now, from some historical context, I think that this is important too, because like I said, I think that the faith, the heart-centered love faith of David Icke is much more important to David Icke, and he thinks is more important than archons, right? That compared to this truth, the untruth of the archons, reptilians, greys, zeteroticulans, whatever, right? Right? Blown away. Nothing compared to that power. And also, for historical context, remember that David Icke's first stepping onto the world stage, right, was not, right then, the Queen Mum is a reptile. It's about time you bloody well knew it. That's not how he came out, remember? He came out as the Son of God, right? It was only after the ridicule that the journey went into another direction, and not so much Son of God as, harbinger of the apocalypse, the warning signs of all that's going wrong around the world around us. But I think if you read his books, it's very clear that really what he wants to do is he's trying to bring everybody back to there. And when I say that he's a guru, I don't think that I'm not trying to imply or that he's trying to mind control people or convince people or convert people to his religion or ascend to any Messiah-like status, even though it is undeniable that many of his followers and fanatics truly do interact with him that way, that he is the messenger. There was a life before David Icke, and then David Icke came and flipped that fucking script and saved our asses, right? Take another look at They Live, whatever the case may be. Okay. So I think that that's important to note, that in the historical context, I think that if he had his druthers, David Icke would be a religious and spiritual philosopher, not a conspiracy theorist, right? But you got to pay the bills. It's a mirror to my world in that sense. Negativity versus the message of love. It is undeniable. It is a scientific principle, and I've decided to engage and accept it and work with it rather than trying to fight the Tao. Right? Go with the flow. It is what it is. Assume for the second that things really are the way they are supposed to be, and that's the way it is. Negativity sells. Bashing guys' heads in sells. Debate sells. Aggression sells. What doesn't sell so well is nuanced philosophy and take a look at the interior of my mind. And that's not to say that someone who reacts to certain videos or YouTube videos or messages of mine differently than other ones is wrong. That's not to say that at all. It's just to say it's demonstrable. You know what I mean? If it bleeds, it leads. If I make a video that says David Icke, fuck your mother, that's gonna get a lot of hits. And if I say something like, let's talk about love, you know what I mean? Not so much. So every once in a while, I think we're gonna have to come out and just do a David Icke and talk some negativity, talk about some darker things, right? Because that's what gets people around here. It is what it is. Okay. So I'm not gonna overthink it. I'm not gonna go back. I've just got one page of notes here, and we're coming up on the end, and that's fine. I'm getting a leg cramp too, which sucks. But what are you gonna do? Might stretch in a minute. So look, I mean, another focusing point on David Icke as a guru or as a religious leader, I think, has to do with the actions of the devotee. And really, we have to ask ourselves, is it self-evident that what David Icke says is true? About archons, about reptilians, about love being the only answer, about vibrational states, right? Or are we accepting his philosophies on faith? Right? And assuming for the argument that if one hears something and it just resonates with it, just have a feeling about it, that's accepting on faith. That feeling is a subjective reality. It's a subjective state, but it really is not self-justifying, right? If a man is involved in fruitful, procreative sexual relations with his lover, his true organic woman, right? That's a lot different than if that same individual were to engage in sex with a prostitute. The mechanics might be the same. The biological reactions and physiology might be the same, but the truth of it, the reality of it is so much different, right? So feelings and emotions may not give us the best indications of truth, Just because it feels good doesn't mean that it is good. I want to move on a little bit. We're going to just kind of go through a couple of things, rapidly, a little bit, kind of rapidly, and then we'll finish up, and then we'll talk about, what I'm going to be kind of maybe doing next. So we talked about faith. How does David Icke put together his worldview and his philosophy? Like I said, I've read Children of the Matrix. I can't remember which other. I think I read, fuck my mother. I don't even know what the fuck they are. God damn it. Was it Global Conspiracy? It's like the big one. And then, and now I'm reading, I've started all the books. I get he publishes a new book almost every year. You buy it. I buy it. I buy them as art objects. I mean, they're just amazing to me. And you start them, and eventually you're like, oh God, you take a break. And then by the time you come back, you say, I'm going to read some more David Icke. He's got a new book. But guess what? I think I have a feeling that you could take all of David Icke's books, randomly shuffle them, and read them in any order, in any direction, and you're pretty much going to get the same thing. It's really kind of the same book. The amazing thing about David Icke is that I really do get the feeling and impression, even though there's a ton of repetition of his material between book and book, he's not cutting and pasting. He's not copy pasting stuff from Children of the Matrix into Humanity Get Off Your Knees. That he literally sits at his computer and recapitulates this information in a slightly different way. I really do think that that's how he does it, and I think that's brilliant. You know how else he does it? Just like you and me. How does David Icke put together his philosophies? How does David Icke know what he knows, and why does David Icke believe what he believes? Even though David Icke has many criticisms, like Mark Passio, about New Age philosophy, I'd argue that you can't distinguish Mark Passio or David Icke's philosophy. Mark Passio may have updated his philosophy a bit. I know he's going into a more anarchist direction, but for the most part, What the fuck was I going? Oh, it's just these researchers, they're just reading the works of other writers and workers. If you read David Icke's book, he'll tell you explicitly. Stuart Swerdlow says this about what happened at the Montauk Project in his book about the Montauk Project, and here I'm repeating the information to you to establish the same point that I think that he established. This is the nature of time, this is the nature of the universe, this is the nature of reality. He cites as reference their books, their websites, their particular researchers and authors. He's basically doing the exact same thing that you and I do when we pick up a David Icke book. Looking at past material, reading it, absorbing it, putting it into his context, his conception, his worldview, and then pushing it forth, back into the world. The Saturn Moon Matrix, he got, the humanity's origin on different planets, the work of Zecharia Sitchin, all of this stuff. One thing influences the other, but David Icke is, if you read his books, he'll tell you, I bought this book, I read it, this person says this, but if you go to those materials, it doesn't read like David Icke. It reads like your classic New Age, and the quartz crystal then hung from the pendulum, moving in a southwestern direction would indicate that, love is in the air. What the fuck, you know what I mean? Mr. Right's just around the fucking corner. I mean, it's just New Age books and material that resonates with him as true. He accepts as true and he puts forth. And then you and I join in the fun by drinking that good old Kool-Aid. And then before you know it, right? Because one person's borrowing from this guy and then this guy's borrowing from him again. And before you know it, we all think that everything is set in stone. We think it's established that Zecharia Sitchin knew how to reach Sumerian, right? We think it's established that there's aspects about the moon and its conception that just boggles the mind of astronomers and astrophysicists. They just have no idea how the fucking moon got there. Well, no, they may not know specifically, but then no one's really going crazy over the moon anymore. You know what I mean? There's things that we know and understand about astrophysics and about, how celestial bodies come together. Not that all mysteries have been solved, but clearly, he thinks that there's more mysteries about the moon than I think there probably are in mainstream science. That's an aside. Because I want to keep this a no judgment zone, and because I want to keep it real, and I want to keep skin in the game, right? And I want to be authentic and not try and be superior to anybody. And, I just want to establish something, very clear. You know what I mean? Everybody thinks, or people can think that they know everything, right? You really feel on a day-to-day basis, if you're like me, that you got a handle on what's going on, what's up, people's motivations, how human psychology works, how economics work, different things. There might be some mysteries, but you generally feel like you can make a call between who's full of shit and who might be telling you the truth, right? So we have thoughts, we have philosophies, and we have ideas. Now look, people that have looked at my past videos, or specifically the videos that I talk about my own religious faith, will know I have a very it's a materialistic based atheistic worldview, but then it's supplemented, and then we cross over this Rubicon where then I'm able to be spiritual on the other side. I know it's confusing, and it might just might be hard to communicate, or it just might not make any sense. That happens. But I did want to be honest and say, look, I believe in evolution, right? When I think about, competing theories for the origin of humanity on planet Earth, right? And I were to look at the Old Testament or the translations of or the work of Zecharia Sitchin, right? Or evolution, an atheistic worldview where science is the answer, and that's how it all came together. In either of those three conceptions, let's take the atheist. It's very easy for the atheist to look at the other two individuals, right, and say, you fucking morons. Really? That's how you think it works? Because some authority figure, right, got in front of the classroom, got in front of the pulpit, got in front of the congregation and told you all this bullshit. Now you just accept it as true because your parents accepted it as true and they told you that it was true and that was ratified. Even though you never saw Jesus walk on water, you're going to accept that as true. Even though you never saw God, build the world in 7 days with everything that we know about science says that it's been so much more time has gone by, you're going to believe this. You're an idiot. You're an idiot for listening to that authority figure. You're an idiot for listening to what people told you. You're an idiot, right, for not understanding the scientific truth. Look, dude, I, like 99.999% of everyone else out there in the world who believes in evolution, probably have to concede that I have no fucking concept of how it really works. I have been told I did not look at the world around me and say, oh, evolution makes sense because this, this, and this. No. Some authority figure got in front of the pulpit, got in front of the classroom, got in front of the congregation, and told us, this is why, this is how it works. I didn't see anything evolve. There are missing links in the fossil record that these people explained to me one way or the other. Hey, right? It's hard for me as just a mainstream regular guy walking around the world that I do to understand organically how an amoeba became man, or whatever the case may be. You know, I'm being a little fast and loose with the rules of science. Now, let me make something very clear. I don't believe that my belief in or faith in evolution is the same as someone's faith in some religious concept or some holy book. It's distinguishable. But I do want to be honest and say, hey, that underlining it, I could be wrong. It could be just that simple, that I'm listening to different set of, it's the magic word of the day, gurus. So let's look at what we believe and why we believe it. When I was involved in Krishna consciousness, there was a great movement in the early 90s, kind of peaked in the mid 90s, called Krishna Core. And what it was hardcore bands. The term hardcore in music can mean like a whole bunch of different things. I know that I got a lot of subscribers from Europe. We're not talking about hardcore techno. We're talking about punk rock hardcore. Bands like 108, bands like Shelter. There were bands that were associated with the Krishna consciousness movement who espoused it. They were religious bands. You know what I mean? But they were great. But one of the things that was a very common practice for these bands to do was usually have an album of two sides. One side would be the music, and the other side would be some guru, some devotee, someone talking about religion and Krishna consciousness specifically. One of those, there was an album by a band called 108. And one of the things that they said at the end, one of the teachings, I think it came from the singer himself, a hardcore Brooklyn boy. The great thing about Krishna consciousness is that these are some of the most, it's like 1965 via 1955. There's a lot of old school kind of philosophies and, beefy kind of agendas in men in Krishna consciousness, but we don't get too far away from it. But the one lesson that I learned from that album was this, is that he said at the end, in a heavy New York accent, everybody wants to look at the Krishna consciousness devotee and say, you're an idiot for following a guru, for listening to what someone else told you about life, to listen to someone tell you about knowledge or information or what's real or not real. Everyone has a guru. If you're a scientist, you got a guru. If you're, a musician, you got a guru. If you're a drug addict, you're a guru. You got a guru. Your dealer's your guru. Whatever the case may be. It was kind of boneheaded. It's kind of not, it's very rough and brusque, and it might not kind of hold water. It might be one of those religious arguments that makes sense when you're a couple of beers in and you're hanging outside smoking a cigarette outside the bar, and here comes the evangelical Christian to say something like, do you ever look at the world like the building? You know that there's a designer because the building's got a designer. You know there's an architect. But how do you look at a mountain or a sun and not think that there's an architect as well? And you might be sitting there high up off your gourd and say to yourself, maybe it kind of makes sense. But the next morning you wake up and you realize, no, it doesn't make any sense at all. It's totally different. A building is different than a mountain. A mountain is different than a sun. Whatever. But let's take that on loan and let's just say, let's look at ourselves. What do you believe about the world around you, and why do you believe it? Where did you first learn it, right? Where did it come from? Because the fact of the matter is, there's a great philosopher past called U.G. Krishnamurti. U.G. Krishnamurti. And he pointed out the fact that, I didn't name this thing a hand. No. Gaga Google, when I'm in my little crib as an infant, my mommy and my grandma, my abuela, my bubby, they're telling me, show me your hand. This is your hand. These are your eyes. Your eyes. You learn that these are your eyes. These are your ears. And you're taught. And by the time you realize that you've been spending your life being taught things, it's really kind of hard to figure out who you were before they started teaching you. I agree wholeheartedly with David Icke about one thing. Love. Yeah, that's the answer. Life, love, death, hate. The world spreads out not in shades of gray, the center point between black and white might be a shade of gray. But in between, you have all the colors of the spectrum. You have all the points. You have all the things that can happen. Good news, bad news. Someone's born, somebody dies. War breaks out, peace is declared. And we all have some experiences. Did we have fun with this video? Lord knows I did. I would rather talk about people in this context, about their ideas and philosophies, than I would saying things like David Icke is a fucking retard, liar, moron, jerk, dude, dummy, douchebag, fucker. God, I wish I could do a good David Icke impersonation. I really could. A good David Icke impersonation would make me as happy as a good Christopher Walken impersonation if I could do it. Right? I just spend my entire life walking around the house going, "All right, what's this then?" Be great, Last thing, and then we're going to move on to talk about what's going to come up next. Very interesting thing about David Icke. Now, I'm cuckoo bananas in a lot of my conceptions and thoughts about the universe, and this is going to make maybe no sense to anyone but me. Oftentimes we see older men like David Icke develop what's known as brow lines. Right? We frown over time and we develop these lines. David Icke has a very interesting set of brow lines. He's got what appears to be two vertical stripes coming down the bridge of his nose. Now, why that's interesting to me is because, as a person who studied Hinduism, we often see Hindus with what's known as tilak, or sacred clay markings on their head, their arms, chest, various places. Three lines is associated with Shiva. U's and V's and circles are often associated with Krishna, with Vishnu. Okay? So when I see David Icke now, I just can't help but think to myself that he's developing this natural kind of Vishnaya, marking. Now I know that's probably this probably has to do with the fact that he furs his brow like this instead of like that, whatever the case may be. But interesting to me, and I noted, and just pointing out and showing once again that I'm cuckoo bananas. I ain't no better than nobody else. Where are we going next? Everyone dying for me to talk about Simon Parkes, and we have to. Look, there's something new that's happening, okay? There's, right away. Okay. I believe, looking at the world, the conspiracy theory world, looking at the YouTubes, looking at the various internet radio broadcasts and podcasts, looking at the various websites and what's going out there, there's something happening. There's a new kind of a formulation or association occurring where I think a group of people are kind of coming together. They might just be trying to come together as a survival technique. It's easier if you've got people promoting the same philosophies. Or it just might be an accident of fate of these things just kind of coalescing. But let me break it down like this. Cobra, David Wilcox, Ben Fulford, okay, Simon Parkes, okay, from their website designs to the messages that they're putting, Corey Good, from the website designs to the messages that they're putting forth, there's no doubt in my mind that these people are some way trying to work in concert. They're starting to say the exact same things at the exact same times. So we're going to be looking at that, and we're also going to be looking at the term Khazar and Khazarian. It's very important to understand and know that I've pointed out in the past is that, look, I don't think that anti-Semitism is the worst kind of racism out there. I think it's a kind of racism just like any kind of racism. Whenever you start talking not about individuals and individual actors, but you start talking about groups, whether that group be Jewish, Muslim, Semitic, Occidental, whatever, you know what I mean? You're engaged in generics. You're engaged in racism, right? If you start hearing people say the term Khazar and Khazarian, it's very important that you know that there's a conspiracy theory that suggests that the Jews, the people that go around calling themselves Jews, ethnically identifying themselves as Jews, or religiously identified as Jews, right, are not really the Jews from the Old Testament, from the Bible. They're not the Jews of Jesus, right? That these people that are in control of Israel, these people that are in control of Hollywood, these evil Jews, they're Khazarians. That back in the day, the Caucasus Mountains, one king converted his entire kingdom to Judaism, and that's why Jews look like this, right? Instead of looking like they came from out of the Middle East, right? It is debunked. It is not true. That's not the way that it works. The genetic sciences will tell you that the enclaves of ethnically Jewish people in New York, in Israel, in Europe, whatever, you can look in China and in Africa, you can analyze their DNA. And there are certain genetic markers that you can trace back to the Middle East, just like we can all be traced back to the Middle East before we could all be traced back to Mother Africa. There's a common origin to human society. It didn't happen in the Caucasus Mountains, though that might have historically happened. That's not why there's all the Jews. That's not where all the white Jews came from. No, you spread out of the Middle East, right? Over hundreds, moving into thousands of years, the genes spread. People fall in love. Hey, Judaism is a religion, remember? You can convert. And even though it might seem incredibly unattractive to convert to Judaism, say, in the dark ages of the Middle Ages, right? There was undoubtedly people who did it, right? Me, you, Sammy Davis Baker Jr., Jews come from all sorts of places, People convert. It's very, to me, when I went to temple, I was going to temple with some kids that looked like they were Japanese. Why? Because their Japanese mother or Japanese father converted to Judaism in order to marry a Jew. Everyone wanted to be happy, But Andrea Metters at Galactic Connections and all those other motherfuckers I just mentioned. I'm just saying in a pejorative sense. I'm not calling them, I don't have anything against these people. They're humans. They're just like me, right? But they start saying this word Khazar and Khazarian, and I just want to point out that it's still anti-Semitic, right? It's still racism, okay? The Jews are just like the blacks, are just like the Puerto Ricans, are just like the Irish, right? We know who we know. We're raised in a certain culture. We feel comfortable in certain contexts. We're used to certain cuisine and certain food. We've got certain philosophies and theologies that are common amongst our people. But that doesn't change the fact that after we get to the conception of our people and we expand that out, we realize that our people is the human race. There is no Jew. There is no black. There is no Asian. There is no Caucasoid, right? There is no Dravidian. There's no Jain, there's no Hindu, there's no Muslim man. They're just human beings. Okay? So please understand that when you hear the term Khazar, these people are trying to say the same anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic stuff, but they don't want to be slammed as being anti-Semitic. So let me ask you this question. Even if we all came out of the Caucasus Mountains, aren't we still human? Wait, because we came out of the Caucasus Mountains or because we weren't there at the time of Jesus, which many of these people don't even believe in the first place, right? They don't believe in this Old Testament philosophy. If you Ethiopians, whatever, if you identify any group of people and start acting like this group of people are bad, whatever, that's racism. And here's the other thing, BB, okay? It doesn't matter if you're Jew. It doesn't matter if you were raised Jewish. If you start saying anti-Semitic things, it doesn't mean you're a self-hating Jew. It just means you're purporting anti-Semitic philosophies and theologies. Brother Nathaniel was born and raised a Jew. That's my ultimate answer. Whenever anyone comes up and says, I'm not anti-Semitic, and I'll tell you why, it's important to remember that when you hear me talk about Israel, when you hear me talk about the Khazars, that I was raised Jewish, right? That I am Jewish, or I ethnically identify as Jewish. That means jack shit nothing. All that matters is the philosophy, the thought, the idea, and the impact that it will have in the world around us. Here's another thing. Let me tell you another thing, where we're going with this. A couple of things. Coming up, we are going to be talking about Simon Parks. We're going to be talking about Cobra. We're going to talk about why you would be willing to take as historical and newsworthy reportable fact the rantings of these people and say to yourself to just accept on faith that they've got some insider knowledge, right? That they know the score. What makes you think that they know the score? What makes you think that disclosure is about to happen, that's really coming together? That behind the scenes, this meeting has happened, or this meeting has happened. What makes you think that Cobra has any understanding or conception of what Putin is doing, or what Barack Obama is doing, or what any world leader is doing? He gets his information the same place that you get your information, the internet and the television news. If I'm lying, I'm dying. Cobra, you want to come out of the closet and debate me? You want to talk to me about who you are, where you come from? You don't want to show your identity. You want to show your face. There's no reason not to. David Wilcox is going around saying the same stuff. He's not getting taken out. No one's iced Simon Parks. And David Icke is selling out Wembley, right? There's no fucking fear here. There's something you can blow, whatever. And if you want to talk to me behind the robot voice and, with not showing your picture, that's fine too. Any of these people. And when I say debate, I don't want to debate. I want to talk. Why don't you have little stones? Instead of softball in your life, instead of going to the places where people are going to kiss your ass and agree with you, why don't you face a tough question? See it? That's it. Right? So we're going to talk about these people, and I want to talk to them more like I talked about David Icke. I know I got a little upset there. I know I got a little activated, a little bit angry. You got to understand, right? As a person who believes and understands, right, that not my people, it's not that 6 million of my people, right, were genocided, or that that genocide is more important to me than the Armenian genocide or the rape of Nanking by the Japanese. No, I mean, human tragedy is human tragedy, but this, I said it before and I'll say it again. Do your research. The Nazis were vegans, vegetarians, sun worshippers, nudists, okay? They studied ancient Indian philosophy. They studied ancient Buddhism. Does it start to sound familiar? They believed in mysticism. They believed in contacting the other side. They certainly believed in a superior creator, grand architect of the universe. They were heavily influenced by Freemasonry. Sound familiar? Does it sound like the New Age? Because it was. Don't for a second think that there might not be tools in your toolbox that are really weapons of war. The unexamined life is not worth living. Let's examine our lives. I love you. I love all of you. Khazar, Black, love you all. I want to talk to you all. Please talk to me. Reach out and touch someone. With a hug or a handshake, hopefully not a punch to the nose, right? Jeez, thanks. Okay. I do love you. I love you. Put a smile back on my face. Okay, so we're going to be coming up on Simon Parks. We're going to be talking about that stuff. We're going to be talking about Cobra, all that yada yada. We're also going to be talking about, chemtrails. Yikes, a good friend, has requested that I cover and talk about chemtrails. So, to that note, it's going to be hard. I started, she was able to point me in a lot of good directions and point me to a lot of good sources and YouTube videos, but I could always use more. I really do want to kind of come to grips and understand. My research indicates that video might be tragically short because I don't know how much I'm going to have to say because it involves science. I mean, at a certain point, when you look at the chemtrail situation, there's, it gets into chemistry. It gets into a lot of areas that I might not be interested in talking about in that way, and I just might not feel satisfied that I can cover. Also, I could be totally honest with you, my research so far has led me to one conclusion: I really don't know. Right? I know I look up in the sky and I see more of these contrails, more of these chemtrails than I've ever seen before. I'm a father, so that's very concerning to me, right? I understand that, I live in a world where there are, larger economic and governmental entities who are making decisions about what to put or not put into the environment that affect me intimately in my person that I have no control over, right? So it's scary. So we will be talking about chemtrails. On that note, I know that a lot of you have been talking about and thinking about chemtrails. So if there are particular videos that you think are very good or particular videos that you think are bad, okay, we'll be doing YouTube videos. It's the easiest information for me to absorb at this rate to be able to produce more content. So if you know or you're interested in chemtrails or you've got great resources on chemtrails, please tell me about them. Okay, I don't know when it's going to happen. It's going to happen. We'll probably talk about Simon Parkes first, either individually or in the context of, like I said, this new kind of Ben Fulford, David. Well, look at their websites. The websites look the same. It's just, I tell you, it's starting to look a lot the same. Okay, I love you all. I'll talk to you next time. Had fun making this video. Look forward to talking to you again. Bye bye.